Hello, I'm Tom, the Communications and Outreach Officer for the University of Oxford's Astrophoria Foundation Year. In this presentation, we're going to look at the interview process for the Foundation Year. We hope it will give you a good insight into what our interviews are like. The presentation also includes some top tips on how to make the most out of the experience if you're invited to interview with us. Firstly, it's important to say that if you've been offered an interview for the Foundation Year at the University of Oxford, congratulations! Our courses are highly competitive, and so being offered an interview is already a big achievement. We take a holistic view of all parts of an application when making our admissions decisions. It is worth noting that interviews are just one part of an application that we consider. We also look at your academic achievement, individual circumstances, personal statement, academic reference, and Foundation Year additional questionnaire submission. The interview can be important, but it is not necessarily the deciding factor. You may find it useful to remind yourself of this if you are feeling a bit nervous before your interview. All interviews for Foundation Year courses will take place online in mid to late March. The panel who will interview you is likely to include subject tutors in your chosen subject and Foundation Year team members. You are likely to have two separate interviews if you reach this stage of the application process. Each interview will be somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes in length. You will also receive any invitations to interview at least a week in advance of it taking place by email. This should give you time to make suitable arrangements. Interviews will have an academic focus, and you will be asked questions that relate to the subject you have applied for. There may be some questions about your motivation to study your course, but the majority of the interview will be asking you to comment on interesting questions or solve problems about your subject of interest. The questions will give you an opportunity to combine your existing knowledge with things which you are unlikely to have encountered before. Interviews are designed to be challenging, and so you will be asked questions that you do not know the answer to straight away. We don't expect you to have an immediate answer, so don't panic if you don't have one. The interview is about the way that you think, and tutors will guide and support you. You may also be asked about your motivation for doing a foundation year in your chosen subject. We are looking for students who would benefit from a foundation year and have a strong commitment to their chosen subject. Now we're going to take a look at the types of questions that are common in Oxford interviews. The types of questions you will be asked will depend on the subject that you have applied for. You may be asked to discuss a current topic related to your chosen subject. This may be a recent news story or theory, for example. You may be asked to look at a piece of writing, a graph or an object, and then analyse it or discuss it in a critical way. You may be provided with this in your interview or a little in advance. You may be asked to solve a problem. This is common in subjects that relate to science or maths, and this may involve calculations or solving an equation, for example. You may be asked about something you have written in your personal statement. This doesn't happen in every interview, but it is a good idea to make sure you're familiar with everything you have written in your personal statement before going into your interview. It is likely that questions will encourage you to combine your existing knowledge from your school or college studies with new information that you are presented with. A good deal of the teaching at Oxford takes place in small classes or tutorials, and your interviewers, who may be your future tutors, are assessing your ability to study, think, and learn in this way. Tutors are looking for your self-motivation and an enthusiasm for your subject. We are looking for an ability to think independently and to engage with new ideas beyond the scope of your school or college syllabus. Don't rush to give a final answer. Take time to think clearly and critically before responding. It is important to be an active listener in interviews. Listen carefully to the question you have been asked and answer that. Also listen to the information and guidance tutors are giving you and factor it into your responses. Lastly, we are looking for people who will benefit from a foundation year and the tutorial teaching style at Oxford. What is said is more important than how it is said. We aren't looking for a smooth performance or students who are skilled in public speaking. The most profound statement can be made in the simplest language, and the most flowery of language can be used to convey very little of importance. If you're not expressing yourself fluently, that's okay. If you embark on what is clearly a pre-rehearsed speech, or you are clearly very familiar with a topic, our interviewers are experienced enough to ask follow-up questions that will take the interview in a different direction. Remember, interviews are about the way that you think, not how good your memory is. Extracurricular activities aren't important to us. Admission is based on academic criteria alone. Admissions tutors aren't qualified to decide which is better out of president of the school council or captain of the school soccer team, but they are qualified to assess candidates' academic abilities. You will not be asked to discuss any of the individual circumstances which you've disclosed in your foundation year additional application questionnaire. So here are a few key things to remember. Wear clothes that you feel comfortable in. You won't be judged on what you wear. Listen carefully to the questions and don't be afraid to ask for them to be repeated. At the end, you are likely to be asked if you have any questions yourself, but don't feel that you have to ask anything. This is not part of the interview and you will not be assessed on any question that you ask here. If you do have a question though, we would be happy to try our best to answer it. If the technology goes wrong or the connection is bad, make sure you tell your interviewers so that they are aware. If the interview can't proceed, then don't worry. We will rearrange it as soon as we can. In December, we ran thousands of online interviews, and so we have lots of experience with dealing with technology and connection glitches. There are a few things that you will need and want to have with you for your interviews. You will need a computer with a microphone, speakers, and a webcam with access to Microsoft Teams as the video conferencing tool, either installed in advance or via an internet browser. It's worth noting that you do not need to have a Microsoft account in order to use Microsoft Teams for this purpose. We strongly recommend that you do your interview on a computer or laptop and not on your phone. It will be much easier for you to be able to see what is needed, especially if you and the tutors are drawing graphs together or making notes. You should also have the following: some plain paper and pens to take any notes. This would be useful if you are asked to share on screen a written response to a question, for example. You should have a copy of your personal statement, and also you should have access to any pre-reading you may have been sent to look at in advance of your interview. Note that this is only applicable to some subjects. Lastly, you may want to bring headphones if you are likely to be distracted by noise, as well as a bottle of water. In order to feel confident for your interview, you may want to take some steps to prepare beforehand. There are many ways that you can do this. Think about why you want to do your chosen course. What aspects of it appeal to you? You may be asked about things that you've mentioned in your personal statement, so make sure that you have reread it and revisited any of the books or topics you mention in it. Questions may relate to content covered in your recent school or college work, so it's a good idea to refresh your memory before your interview. Use your free time to read widely around your subject and take critical views of arguments that you encounter. If possible, practice discussing a topic linked to your subject with a friend, teacher, family member, or even yourself. It is good to practice talking your thoughts out loud. There are a number of resources created by the University of Oxford which might be a good starting point for your interview preparations. We have a range of mock interview recordings and example questions that are available on the university website. These are aimed at undergraduate interviews, but they will still be useful resources for foundation year interviews as well. Another good resource for exploring topics related to your subject is the Oxplore website. This can help provide inspiration to investigate new topics and help you to begin seeing something from multiple viewpoints. You can find the links to these resources in the YouTube video description. Finally, let's look at some key hints and tips. It's not necessarily about always getting right answers. We're not looking for someone who knows everything already. We are looking for someone who can benefit from the Oxford learning style. Sometimes there isn't a right answer, and we are just looking to hear your thoughts on a particular question. It is important to express your thought processes out loud whilst you are trying to work something out. This allows tutors to understand your thought process, and it gives them an opportunity to provide guidance if you're going off track. Rather than saying you're not sure, be willing to express what you think about a question, even if you're not sure it is correct. Tutors want you to perform well in interviews and will provide guidance to try and help you through the process. Listen to the information and guidance that they give you and consider it when deciding what to say in response. If you have questions that you would like to ask in order to help you respond to a question, then please ask the tutors. They would also be happy to help if you need a question repeating or clarifying. Many people come out of the interviews feeling that they have not performed well, but in reality, they have been very successful in impressing the tutors. Try not to dwell on how well an interview is going and focus on having a discussion about something you are passionate about with an expert in that field. If you have found an interview difficult, that can often be a good thing. The tutors have been able to stretch and challenge you and find out more about you as a student. Thanks for listening to this presentation. Remember, the foundation year team are happy to answer questions if you have any. You can contact us via email at foundationyear@admin.ox.ac.uk. And if you are offered an interview, we would like to wish you the best of luck.